What is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is Steiner here with part two of our expansive interview with live artist Caroline Herbster of Rising Tide Art Studio. Caroline, welcome to being still on the show.
Thank you for having me still on the show. And yeah, I love our conversation. So I appreciate you giving me so much space to share.
You mentioned Mondegreen earlier. Mondegreen is the mishearing of lyrics, and a famous Phish one is, the moment dance that the moment ends. You realize the moment ends. So what was the turn you made to to change that?
Yeah, that's beautiful. They opened Mondegreen with Moma Dance, so that's that was pretty cool. Um, so yeah, I had these realizations. And really, I mean, a lot of it was outside of me. A lot of it was God showing me, like, Caroline, this is what you need to be doing. And I say that because I know that to be true for me now, but at the time, like, I didn't know what I was experiencing. I was starting to kind of go through this spiritual awakening during the pandemic. I was recognizing that I had been dealing with anxiety most of my life and just nobody knew because I'm a confident, happy, cool girl and neurodivergence and how, that was like really affecting. I mean, it's great. I mean, a lot of it is like our superpowers and I love it. But in regards to not being fully present at shows, some of that is getting caught in thoughts or layers of thoughts and I don't think that, I think any human experiences that. I think that's something a lot of people understand. And I think a lot of uh, live music lovers who are attracted to the kind of music that we tend to listen to, especially understand that because when, especially like if you are at a show and you're in a jam, there's a lot of room for your mind to wander. And for me, it was distracting me from the experience of being present. I wasn't being present in the way that I am able to now be present with my consciousness seated inside me, like having awareness of what I'm experiencing rather than like truly being outside of me and aware of all of these external things. And so I went through these experiences during the pandemic and um, I really had like so much more room to create and make art and just take a breath. And um, it was really like listening to Goose. They started doing these little live streams in the spring, like kind of right after the shutdown. So I'll say April, um, that were Rick and Peter with Jeff, who at the time was not part of the band. He was just like a friend of Rick and Peter's. And the three of them were playing from this really cool venue called the Solarium. And they were streaming these little sessions. And a lot of that started to happen during the pandemic. Like pre-pandemic, the only music that I was live streaming, not to say it's the only thing that was being streamed, but the only music I was live streaming was the occasional Dead and Company concert. Like Wrigley Field, we watched a couple others.
Sure.
And I know Nugs was a thing, but like it just wasn't such a widespread way to consume music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then there started during the pandemic to be like these live music sessions on Sirius XM. And, for me, it was I had really gotten into listening to Goose and they started these streams. And so I was enjoying those. And um, as the summer was approaching, they did Bingo Tour 2020, which it was so cool. It felt like, I mean, I don't even know what word to use. It just was such an incredible way to provide music to people who were not able, when we were not able to have that community and go to shows. And um, I don't know if you know anything about Bingo Tour, or those of
Well,
you who are
just
listening.
I personally know a little bit about it, but I was just about to say for the benefit of our viewers and listeners who either aren't aware of Goose or aren't familiar
Yeah.
with what the series was, to let us know.
Yeah, they did this really cool virtual tour, and it had incredible quality production in terms of video and sound. Um, but what they did was they called it Bingo Tour. When you bought a ticket for the live stream, they sent you a bingo card that had randomized songs on it. And then during, I think it was 4 or 5 sets of music. So it was 2 weekends. And then in the week in between, they had this whole like get involved kind of call to action. And they did like a yoga class and like some like interactive games over Zoom. And I think maybe we did yoga, but like I didn't get involved as much as I wanted to, but I got involved with the music. And um, what was really cool was, so they gave you these bingo cards and then they put all of their songs on bingo balls, as well as like other random wacky things. And which I'll look up Bingo Tour on Spotify or wherever. Like there's probably one called Beast Pose. They like literally just struck a pose for a little while. There was one where they like they switched instruments and like jammed on somebody else's kit. So
So they made it an interactive experience
they
with the audience.
exactly. And their friend, manager, I don't really know what his role is now, but coach, John Lombardi, he had like a traditional bingo
Oh
roller.
yeah, the
And
old
yep. And it
uh-huh.
was like certain camera angle right on that. And all of the balls were in there and he would roll and a ball would come out. He would hold it up to the camera. The band would kind of get the, okay, that's what we're playing next. So it was
Okay.
like jamming in a way that's like the band didn't even know what they were going to segue or transition into, you know? But they were like still keeping with the jam, which just it was so freaking cool. It was so cool. And then if you got like a song on your bingo card, you would mark it off. And if you got bingo in any of the traditional ways, 5 in a row, 4 corners, whatever, there were certain prizes like a Zoom session with the band or like a signed poster or like all these, ways to then like kind of it just the whole idea was to like provide community and get people involved and love live music at a time when like we didn't have it.
Yeah,
And it was
absolutely.
it was so cool and the production quality was incredible. Um, and it felt like our first Goose tour because like up until that point, I had been listening to them since the end of 2019, playing them in my classroom, watching these solarium shows, but like I didn't have a chance to see them yet. And so it really felt like it was my first show. Um, yeah. And so during those shows, Chase and I are hanging out. So I just started drawing during Bingo Tour. We're sitting there and had some paper and a pen. And it's cool. It's not great compared to what I create now. Even just in general, like artistry wise, like I talk about how I really hadn't been creating much and had put these kind of blockages on myself. So like it's cool. It's this is it. If you're just listening, it is a pen drawing sketch of Goose Summer 2020 Bingo Tour, Night 1, 6/19/20. I think this was at, I forget, the rec center maybe. And it was kind of like a barn feel. And here's Trevor, here's Ben, Jeff, Rick,
Keep
Peter.
keep keep holding that up. Hold on just one sec. Keep holding that up. I want to show you what that reminds me of. Keep
Okay.
hold one sec.
Dude, I love when people compare my art to Jerry. Oh man.
You showed me that, and that is the first thing that I thought of was
Wow.
that album cover. Was,
I'm freaking honored.
that
Uh,
it's amazing. Like I hold it up one more time. It's just it's for the folks who are listening and not watching. I just held up a copy of one of the Jerry Garcia band's latest live releases with a shot that looks kind of like this. It's these figures where it's not super detailed, but it's enough where we can create a visually, contextually full picture in our heads when we're looking at it. It's like it's almost like looking at a Rorschach
hmm,
when you're looking at something and you're trying to make sense of what the image is. And when I look at, what you drew, it's like, it takes a second to recognize what it is, but then you get to all the rest of the W's, the when, the where, the why,
right.
and the what, and it reminds me of a Fish lyric from Train Song with a depth and a form unclear. Um, but that there's beauty in that. There's
Yeah.
it's again, like I said it before, it's unique. It's visually not something when I hear the term, live painter or live artist, live drawer, whatever term we want to use, that's not what I
Yeah.
think. That's not what I think of. How would that then translate to being at a show and
Yeah.
and undertaking that task?
Yeah. There were a couple shows that I went to kind of in those like pandemic-y times coming out of it, like pod shows. Actually, the first time I saw Goose live was in a pod show at Spirit of Suwanee, like not in the park, but out where like for Hulaween all the cars are and stuff. But I didn't bring art stuff with me for those kinds of shows. Well, I know that perhaps, and I know Steiner, you'll edit the podcast, but perhaps it sounds like I'm evading some of your questions, and it's not. I'm not intentionally. I just, I think that there's a lot of context to what I do and how it came about, and I know that not everybody needs to know every freaking detail, but like there are some really cool transformative things that have happened to me, with me through the power of music and through the power of Goose. Um, and I'll say something that's probably the most like integral to what I do is that I'm a mystic. Like I just have really spiritual experiences in life. I really feel God in a lot of ways. And in my experience, the universe communicates with me a lot through music. And I hear really powerful things in song, in lyrics, especially live. Like when other people are channeling this energy of creation, of creator, I hear my creator speaking to me through songs, through lyrics. So I really, in 2019, had probably started to hear song in a way that was like helping guide my life. And I was also, I, I kind of developed this theology or like way of being that I there are no coincidences. And anytime that I saw something in my life that felt like a coincidence, I began to identify it as a wink from God or a, who is the universe. It's God is energy. So it was a wink from energy that I was on the right path and to like follow those little signs. Some people call them glimmers, synchronicities, serendipity. I just started to wink, wink, okay, and follow them. And, it really was very profound. And I became really open to receiving and open to hearing and um, went to Dead and Company at the end of 2019, did not dissociate, was super present at that concert. And it was my birthday. And before we went to the show, Chase has this thing of like he refuses to listen to the artists that we're going to see on the day of
Oh
show.
yeah, sure, sure,
So,
sure, sure.
so
Like
he
not wearing
has
the band t-shirt at the show.
Sure, sure. So he has a Not Dead playlist, which is like all dead songs by Not Dead.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
we're standing in the hotel room getting ready to go to the show, and he says, Caroline, I think I was turning 23. You turn 23 tonight. What song are you going to take into like this next chapter of your life? And as he says that, of course, divine timing, serendipity, wink, is Green Sky Bluegrass's cover of Cassidy.
Oh yeah,
And
we'll do it.
just beautiful. And the words that literally he asked that question and they sang, let your life proceed by its own
Some
design.
design. Hmm.
And so like I took that and that became kind of the title of the next chapter. And, then all of this happened with pandemic, with Goose, and went to see them for the first, actually, before I saw them at Suwanee, we went to this little thing that O'Teal played at. And I heard O'Teal sing Terrapin. And
Oh
the
yeah.
lyrics hit me so deep in this way that I had never heard before that like actually really healed a lot of my Catholic guilt and like spiritual
Yeah.
questioning around like um let's see if I can take a breath and get these words right. All I can hear is Cassidy in my head. um The storyteller has no choice. Soon you will not hear his voice. His job is to shed light and not to master. Well, I've certainly had lots of songs speak to me. I've heard my creator speak to me through song, and I could tell you all kinds, but hopefully you'll see that come out in some artwork that I've got in mind. Um, but I want to answer these questions that perhaps I'm skirting around. So in 2021, the end of the summer, uh, Goose threw their own little intimate festival at Lock and Farm, and I going to festivals, you got to bring your little clear backpack, right? And I brought
Mm.
a notebook, an art notebook, and watercolors with me, which I think I had done at Hulaween the previous year, and nothing had happened. I would, and I just let go, and I was like free to create. It was just I had no expectations, but I figured I may want to make art, and I did. And I did a couple. Like I did a watercolor of Grateful Shred, and I then started this really cool pencil drawing of the stage with the crowd and the campgrounds behind it and Goose on stage. And I put all the lineup at the bottom in these flowers. Well, eventually I did that. But at the time, I just started this drawing, and I don't want to talk too much about this, but I had already started Rising Tide by now, and had Rising Tide as a official business for a few months at this point. But I didn't know how to make it musically related because when I started it, I was making maps and doing things for weddings and really loving making maps. But like I could also feel in my spirit that that wasn't what the business was like fully going to be. And I didn't really have a business plan. It just was like the first time I actually created space for me to just create art. Um, and so yeah, started drawing at Fred Fest, then had this really cool experience of serendipitously running into Jeff, who, I described before he wasn't really part of the band. I feel like my first tour was his first tour. Like we kind of came
You
into the
gotta count
scene at the
that.
same time,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
just cool, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
obviously I believe in divine timing and all these like mystical ways of life. So the more, whatever, it we ran into each other this really cool way. And I am not one to ever like force anything. I really like for things to happen naturally and organically. I didn't, he was in my vicinity. I didn't really want to bother him. But I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to tell him I was making this art piece, which I had actually left back at where we were sitting for the festival, but I had a picture of it on my phone. And I don't know what encouraged me to take a photo before I walked away from it. But maybe all this. And so he's sitting there and we're sitting at this table next to him, and eventually he like turns and strikes up a conversation with us. Chase was wearing a Volusia County lifeguard hat from our county in Florida, and Jeff like asked a question about the hat, and we just started talking, and I said, "Hey, I want to show you that I am working on a drawing of the festival." And it really is this cool piece that's like kind of map, kind of live art, kind of like just captures all the little creatures and critters of the festival. And he was just like, "Wow, that's really cool. Like kind of
It's
keep it
awesome.
up, finish
That's
it.
awesome.
Um, yeah, and it was something that for me, I think was really an inflection point because up until that point with my art, stuff that I was making for myself, I often unintentionally, or maybe out of fear of perfection, whatever, like I would abandon a lot of my work. Like it would just be left. And so this was a case where like a, you know, this guy in a band that I love who's like really inspired, the band's really inspired me, is telling me like, yeah, that's cool. Like share it with us. Um, and it
That's
actually
gotta be
took me
that's a great feeling.
it was awesome. It
Yeah.
was awesome. Um, and I literally in the car on the ride home from Virginia to Florida, I started kind of digitizing this sketch into this like poster. Um, and I was almost done in the 11 hour, whatever hours that it took to get back home. But it took me almost a full year to actually like finish it and release it and share it with people. Um, and
that just shows dedication to the craft.
perhaps,
Or well, dedication to the craft and to the spirit of the project, let's say.
yeah,
And
yeah.
accepting procrastination and something that's okay. Maybe a little bit of all those things.
Yeah, or even realizing that sometimes, like, you know, we have to face our fears. Like, I always said, even at this time, there's no growth in comfort. Like if you are stuck in what's comfortable, you are actively not growing outside of that comfort zone. And so,
Absolutely.
everything is a muscle and you have to learn how to flex it. And it took me a long time with that piece. And it was challenging and I was going through a lot of personal struggles throughout the time, but it was something that like I had that external motivation to do this and finish it. And a year later, I reached out or not even a year later, almost a year later, I finally finished it black and white, like a coloring page, which was kind of my original vision for it. Although I wanted it to be a poster too, I just wasn't quite ready to color it yet.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so I contacted the El Goose Times, which is a fan-made Goose magazine for every tour. and they put it in as the centerfold for the 1 year anniversary of FRANDS
Hey,
Festival.
there you go. Whoa.
Yeah. Um,
What a spread, pun intended.
it was
That's
pretty cool.
that's awesome. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so you get this boost from a member of the band that you kind of, came into really at the same time with, and you put the time and effort and dedication into this piece, and then it becomes the centerfold for the middle spread
The
for
community.
the community, right? I mean, you took a moment, like you did it. You done did it.
Yeah.
You took a moment and you turned it into something that was shared amongst the entire community. I mean, the moment didn't end.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, and I've been learning that a lot through my art is that, you know, after really going down this journey of creating so much, which I'll give a few more details to, but there were a lot of pieces that I didn't complete entirely at the concert. And for a long time, I had anxiety around touching them again because I wasn't there. And I had realized that what I was doing was this energetic experience and channeling the energy of the music and the crowd into one thing. And so I had these fears that if I worked on the piece after the concert was over, that it wouldn't be what it was. There's another Phish lyric right there, huh?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Mondegreen this year is what really helped transform my experience around that. I heard or misheard Trey sing or creator speak these like the moment is always, right? So earlier in the festival, we hear the moment dance, the moment ends. And then it was literally like one of the last songs on Sunday. I don't know if Trey actually sang it or not, but what I heard was this moment is always. And I was like having this experience of drawing and working on this piece that I knew was going to kind of just be a pencil sketch and not what I wanted and not complete. And I heard him sing that and it just hit my heart. And like all of that fear was kind of like, like you can touch this, like these bands that you love record their music and you can listen to it and all your friends are taking photos of the exact vantage point that you're in and you like, I went into the festival like really removing expectations to make live art and it actually like allowed me to make a ton
Yeah.
because there was no like pressure to do and I just some of it's good and some of it's just scribbles and on to the next page. But like, I might not think it's great, but somebody else is like, oh, that's Trey. Like,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Well, that's the beautiful part of it is that, like, again, it doesn't matter what your intention is, the interpretation, is of the beholder. So
yeah,
even if,
yeah,
if you might think it's a sketch to toss away, somebody else may see intrinsic, artistic beauty in it.
yeah,
You never know what you create, what people will take to.
totally. And I've got it right in front of me. So since we're talking about
Oh
it, I'll show
yeah,
you.
yeah, might as well
I
pop
worked
it
on
on the
this piece
screen.
after the fact, doing all those things, listening to the shows, looking at photos and videos friends had took, watching the relics on YouTube, and I took my time with it, but I worked on it only while listening to the same shows that I was at, and it's amazing.
Oh wow.
I mean,
In a Monda green, in a green world. Wow. Yep,
right? And
absolutely.
just like captures the whole scene. If you're just listening, it's this little
And it's
panoramic
landscape. It's
piece.
yeah, it's like it's a long
Yeah.
a comic strip almost type length, and
Oh,
I really like it. I really like it. I really like the way that I love that it's portrait and that it's not, just like a drawing, and you really gave it the space it deserves. It really
Mm,
shows the space that a festival can create. It really,
yeah,
embodies that atmosphere to it. Right? It doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't need to be that tall, but it
yeah,
can be that wide. Right? I mean, and that's just like any moment, right? Moments are fleeting, but they can also really, really last, depending
totally.
on kind of where we're at and how we're doing.
Totally. Yeah. And they do. And you've mentioned a few times about my art and I have too, but there's this thing that people have shared with me, and I think a good way to put it is that I leave enough gaps in the way that I draw that people's brains fill in the spaces with their own memories.
That is exactly what I was alluding to earlier with one of the first drawings that you put up on the screen is that it's what was the with the depth and a form unclear from Train Song by Phish, or and
Mm,
another one from the same song, blurry and green with outer space in between.
yeah.
It's a very apt song to describe the way that your art presents itself. I think is it's a
Ah,
really really great likening.
that's beautiful. And Fish has played a huge role in me embracing being a live artist. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's get this show on the
Let's show
road.
on the road. Yep. So we've been honking a lot about Goose. I know they're a big part of your story. Look, Phish is a big part of your story as well. Let's talk about that just a little bit. Where does Phish come into the scene and insofar as your live drawing
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah. Well, I will say Fish in general, sorry to all those 1.0ers out there, but Fish came to me really after Goose. I grew up a Deadhead kid, loved the Grateful Dead. My parents weren't into Fish, which I understand now as an adult is because the one show they tried to go to was really weird. And so it
What
makes
show?
sense that it was like a 91 show at the
Yep,
Moon in Tallahassee. Yep,
yep, that'll do
91's
it.
all I
Yep,
had to say,
yep,
right?
that's
So
all you had to say. That's all I had to say.
exactly. Yeah. So like now as a Fish fan, I get it. But I did grow up with a little bit of like, well, my parents don't like Fish, so like what's up? Like, almost like a little bit of like protection against
What's up with
like
that? What's up with that?
what's up with that? And so I knew of Fish. I probably knew Waste and Farmhouse, but like I really didn't know much more than that. And I remember even in college a couple times people being like, "Oh, you like the Dead? You must like Fish." And I was a little bit of a Fish hater. I was kind of like, no, I don't." Like, and so really after my love with Goose, I think in just the way that music was transforming at the time, but also the jam band scene was transforming in terms of popularity. I was already part of it, but getting a little bit more, I don't want to say mainstream, but just growing attraction, right? For me, that was kind of my okay, like starting to listen to Trey a little bit more and Fish a little bit more, and living with my partner Chase, he is such an audiophile, and like one of the beautiful blessings and curses of living together is that like I never have to pick what music we put on. So there's just music playing, and
I
most
resemble
of the
that
time I
remark.
love it.
I
Yeah,
resemble
I think
that
it's
remark.
common.
Yeah.
I think it's common. So, he started listening to Fish more, and we were just a lot more open to it. And we had a lot of friends who were into, had been to a few shows and were like, come on, guys, like, you gotta come, you gotta go. So, we're coming out of the pandemic in 2021. It's still, I mean, we're still wearing masks places and stuff. Like, we're still kind of technically in the pandemic, right? But we're starting to go to shows again. And after Fred the Festival, I had this inspiration to create art and create live art and thinking about Scramble Campbell and thinking about these seeds, right? And what do I want Rising Tide Art Studio to be? And, kind of trying to merge the fact that I have a teacher heart, but I was leaving teaching and pursuing art entrepreneurship and like what did I foresee for the future? Um, and we went to after moving to Atlanta, saw Goose at the Eastern here, which is a really great venue, and I just was like antsy to create. I was like feeling so frustrated that I didn't have paper and pen or canvas or whatever. And like one of the two shows, I was right under this house light at the top of the venue. And I was like, this would be perfect if I had an easel and I was right here painting. But I wasn't even really doing that at home. I wasn't creating a lot of art at home. I just had this deep desire that I wanted to do that. Wasn't doing it, didn't do it. I did start a piece. Actually, it's behind me. This pencil sketch, you probably can't see much. Like this is of the Eastern, and that's from 3 years ago, and it's still
And there it
exactly
is. Yeah.
pencil. So, I have hopes too to maybe like go back to some of those shows that I didn't create live art at and work on that. But I was feeling this like deep desire to create and to make live art and to do this and to not be scared, but I wasn't doing it. And we got tickets for Phish MSG New Year's Eve. It was going to be our first Phish. And then there was another big um, COVID variant spike, and
Yeah.
they rescheduled those shows, and they made them 420 through Earth Day, I
423.
guess. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, so ended up, going into the new year, going to some local music and stuff, but not a ton. Phish, MSG, um, April was like this big kind of like, we're gonna go back to music kind of thing. Flew up to New York. Um, didn't really think much about it. Did not have art supplies with me. Did not have, even though I had these like feelings at the previous concerts. And went night two and night three. And night three was Earth Day. And I just like I've already talked to you much about my mystical ways of navigating this world and life and see things in very abstract impressionist kind of ways, much like my art. And so, yeah, man, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of high energy. Night one was awesome. They opened with Susie Greenberg, and she was there. And he was like, "This is Susie's first show." And I didn't know she was a real person. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm Susie Greenberg." Like, just had this great time, like, really like a sober experience, right? Um, and then night two, I'm like, okay, cool. I get it. I've gone to a show. Like, I will say without alleging much that I don't do many extracurriculars at concerts. And I decided, like, hell yeah, like it's night two, it's Earth Day, it's gonna be incredible. And my trip was untethering. Um,
Allegedly.
yeah, well, my trip to New York to go to Fish,
Oh, yes. Yeah. I know. The
Yeah,
trip to
yeah,
Madison Square Garden. Yeah.
yeah. And it's Earth Day. I'm in this beautiful butterfly shirt. I'm behind the stage. Feels like everybody is like looking up at me, you know. And I was having a great time. Like first and second set, incredible. The second set, and I feel like, this is something that, especially at Fish, but a lot of these musical, mm, magical collective things, right? Like we're all experiencing a collective consciousness and connection. And when that might be enhanced in certain ways, like that can be really connective and collective. It can also be really interior. And um, I had this experience of like downloading the book. I read the book during the first and second set and was kind of just like, holy shit, there's like this whole world exists that is like here for you. And like you have space here to be you and to be
Huh?
yourself and to like use your gifts and to do the things you want to do. Like, and I had gone to fan art before the show too, which was my first time realizing that like there's not just a shakedown street lot at shows. Sometimes there's like a curated art event, and there are real artists making a full-time living with their, inspiration from music. Um, and so I really had these experiences. The whole second set felt very much like MSG was like a hive, and we were all insects, and we were like, in our own worlds, but like connected to each other, and like the band, like I don't know, it was crazy. And I felt like, this was my becoming of like becoming the butterfly. Like MSG was kind of my cocoon that I was like ready to finally emerge from. Um,
It's funny, I was
and
thinking of like Bees in the Hive. I was thinking of a song that Fish has maybe covered once or twice, but Queen Bee by Taj Mahal, and you
oh
might as
yeah,
well have been in the Taj Mahal, being in that Madison Square Garden seeing Fish on on Earth Day. Like that's the Taj Mahal of Fish experiences right there. I mean, you're and there's
totally.
and there's the Queen Bee, like right, like on stage, and the thing about it is that it's the band. It is
Mm-hmm.
one organism. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
the end. I mean, it's obviously it's the individual parts, but it's the collective organism that makes the, queen bee, that makes the whole hive buzz, that is
Mm-hmm.
just this rising tide of energy that
Yeah.
is unstoppable.
Yeah, dude. And we're all one, we're all filled with divine energy, with the energy of the universe. We're all stardust, right? Like we're all connected, and we're all we're ever doing, even words are vibration. Like we're just transferring energy. Energy is never created or destroyed. We're just
Mhm.
transferring energy to each other. Um, so I had these really incredible uh understandings and experiences and like revelations around myself and around fish. And then there was another set break, and it kind of took me out of it for a minute. And the people in front of us were kind of fucking with me a little bit, like just, having fun. But like that's what Fish fans do. Um, and I was overwhelmed. And like we've talked about anxiety on this podcast, and it that day also, prior to how I chose to experience the show, I had eaten very little and I had had like three coffees. So I was like super amped energy, anxious energy. It was just like very much inside me. And I kind of got um little unsettled at the set break before the third set. I was like really having some delusional experiences and thoughts around like it felt like I, was this butterfly and I needed to fly. I needed to get some fresh air, and there's like nowhere in MSG you can get fresh air.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then
Yeah.
I was feeling this impending energy, which looking back, you all will understand because of what that show was with Earth Day. But I felt this energy of like, I need to get to the water. Like, I need, like, I just, yeah. And I like felt like I needed to get down to the floor. And like, when you're in the 400s behind the stage, like, and
Yeah.
you've never been to MSG before, like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So essentially, I got stuck in a loop in the concourse of anxious energy, kind of becoming untethered, like very tunnel vision. Um, trash on the floor, like, kind of spun people running into things, and like suddenly feeling like instead of being in my little rainbow world of my own where we can all be these like winged creatures doing our own thing, like suddenly I'm like, ugh. And um,
Big
it was a
shift.
lot. It was huge. And I just, had never really had an experience quite like that. Everything up until that point had been very positive and enjoyable. Um, and so then, my partner Chase like was with me, but like trying to calm me down, trying to get me to take a breath or sit. And he had to go back to the seats and get one of our best friends, who was then like, now there's two men like basically chasing me around the concourse of MSG to the point where like ushers were probably worried, like, what is happening? And the third set started again, but like if I, had just been able to get back to my seat, whatever, the whales and the dolphins and the kelp and all the water was right there. I would have been like by the rising tide. And but everything happens for a reason, and we all have our lessons to learn in our own ways. And um, I've learned some impressive and profound takeaways from good trips, but I've learned way more from the bad ones.
Speaking
So,
facts right there. Yep.
oh boy, yeah. So I had to leave the
Allegedly.
show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my
Okay.
trip to New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I had to leave the show early, and mostly because I just was like not really like I couldn't get back to being tethered. And it's really fascinating because like, had I been able to get back to my seat, enjoy the rest of this set, um, walk out of MSG with everybody in like the, beautiful height of everything, it would have been this beautiful, fun, collective experience. But I wouldn't have then gone on this like really personal, deep, spiritual, and like motivational journey that it then kind of sent me on. And instead, I emerged from the cocoon of MSG, this beautiful butterfly, like totally untethered, really like flying on my own, like letting go. um,
So
and
what are
yeah,
you so what are you doing so what are you doing today? What is Rising Tide Art Studio look like today? What have you been up to since this revelatory experience?
yeah. Uh, Today is about 2.5 years later. And after that experience at MSG, came back to Atlanta, and Sweetwater 420 Fest was the next weekend. And just like music festivals before, brought my clear backpack, brought a watercolor set, brought some notebooks, but suddenly I'm just doing it. Like there weren't all these like knots tethering me and keeping me down. I was just doing it. And it wasn't necessarily comfortable to be creating in the crowd because I could feel energy on me, and I could almost hear people talking about like, what's that girl doing? But like now, 2.5 years later, I get into my flow state so fast at a show. Like I don't have those fears of judgment. My consciousness is fully inside me, and like not even in my head. If I'm creating, it's in my heart and in my arms, in my hands. Um, and so in 2022, I went to 27 festivals and concerts, and I created 36 live art pieces. Um, in 2023, I went to 57 festivals and concerts, and I created about 72 live art pieces. Um, and today, I don't know what my numbers are for 2024 yet, but I was a couple of the things behind me. I was a live artist at Mental Awakening Festival here in Atlanta, which also just felt so great because it was the first time I started to talk about like mental health as part of my journey with doing live art. And Then I was hired as the live artist for Sweetwater 420 Fest, which just felt like such a cool juxtaposition that like 2 years ago I was showing up as a fan in the crowd and really embracing this for the first time. And now like I have an all access pass and I'm people are
You're
coming
a
up and
part of
watching
it.
me.
Yeah.
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 Um, yeah, and just it really it's been really beautiful. At the beginning of the summer, I taught my first workshop on live art at Soulshine Reverie, which is used to be summer
Yep.
camp festival. It was my first camp, so it was really cool, and it was a great way to get to see Goose, and I got to see Cotter for the first time with them, and I did a cool piece of them, and also of Arabelo, which is the little
Mhm.
wooden Rick, Peter, Jeff. Um, then over the summer, Goose came to Atlanta to play 3 nights at the Fox. And back in, I don't know, January maybe after Goosemas, I was talking to friends and I was like, hey, like, wouldn't it be cool to do like a fan art style event and have live music? And like, I really want to do this. I think Sweetwater would be the venue. Um, and when you speak your
Mhm.
desires, yeah, it's like it's the loose connections that make a huge difference, like
Mhm.
that tether us to
Absolutely.
each other. You know, like
Absolutely.
I could say something to a friend and they might not be able to do anything, but they might say, "Oh my gosh, I have a friend who works here and I'll talk to him." And that's what happened. A friend of a friend at Sweetwater, and I got invited by another friend that I had done stuff with last year. For, starting to do like art markets and that kind of thing. He did an Atlanta Dead Night and he invited me out to Sweetwater's anniversary party. And so then I met this friend of a friend who works at Sweetwater there. And he was like, hey, like, I hear you want to do something for Goose this summer. And I was like, yeah. And, kind of gave my idea and let's talk about it. And like those conversations are actually what led to me being hired for 420 Fest. And then, I like curated this whole event, got,
It's
15
amazing.
Goose fan artists together, a lot of whom had never vended before, which was just a really like the first time I really did that in a fan art style. I did fan art at Goose Red Rocks. And it was just like I didn't sell anything really, but I put my art out there and
Mhm.
like, it was just such a beautiful way to network and connect with the community. And so my goal for the thing this summer was really to provide a space like that for the community, for the Goose fans who were all coming to town, for the locals, for all the artists, and it just turned into this beautiful thing. And um, we were very successful in terms of like selling shirts and merch and that kind of stuff. But more than that, it was just like a really beautiful community event. And there's not really a lot here, so it was a place where doing something like that, a pre-party with local live music, was like really effective. And I have mixed feelings about like, obviously a shakedown street or like a lot is like kind of a critical part of this genre of music's like growth and
It's
scene.
certainly
And
traditional.
yeah, yeah. And I think I respect it and appreciate it, but like as someone who's like such a live music lover, I'm going for the show. And like that's one of the ways maybe my art has moved through me is that like I'm creating there instead of having to like prepare something for an event or and there's a balance. Like I am actually working on some stuff for some upcoming end of fall and winter things. Um but yeah, it's just it was really really cool and a really I don't know, significant experience for me also like in terms of like, I didn't just make some art and sell it at this community event. Like I organized and planned
Right.
the thing. So
It was your event. Yeah.
exactly. And we had Ryan Storm who does the Always Almost There podcast. They do like a day after show recap and talk about the music. And so they came and recorded their podcast episode from Sweetwater.
Nice.
And, they
Sweetwater,
had the
I'd love
live
to come
music.
out. Sweetwater, I'd love to come out and tape by you.
Yeah, well, come down to Atlanta. We'll have you. I'll definitely pull some strings. Um, so, it just, and then, had some conversations with Sweetwater where they were like, Caroline, this was awesome. Like they had their best day of sales for the entire month of June at that event.
There you
Um,
go. Proof in the pudding
yeah,
right there.
they waived the vendor fee for everybody who participated, which was beautiful. Like one of those things that I think, we live
That's
in such a
awesome.
cap yeah, we live in such
Wow.
a like capitalistic society. If you can say like, "Hey, we appreciate the business you brought and like you don't need to pay the $50 to be here."
That is huge. Like that is, I mean, for all the hurdles that independent artists have to go through already to get their stuff in front of direct to consumer audiences,
Yeah.
to remove that very tangible, very real barrier is a massive, massive feat and should not be understated. I mean, that's a really huge shout out Sweetwater
Yeah.
for doing that. That is one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. I really appreciate fan art shows at the Boda Cheetah shows that we did at Alpine Valley Resort while Phish was playing there. The resort had a fan art show there on Saturday, and I got to see a bunch of my friends, including the awesome Scotty Radford, were all there selling their stuff. And it's really awesome to hear that, you put together this event because, going back to the theme that's really been a part of this whole season, is really community.
Mm,
And part of our roles as secondhand talent is maintaining and sustaining that community and
beautiful.
being an active part and being a figurehead and being the one to say, yeah, I'll organize the event or yeah, I'll do this to help out. Those are the things that really make impact to help push the scene forward. So it's really no small feat. And again, I mean, shout out to you, of course, and again, shout out Sweetwater. I can't say it enough. It's really, really, really epic to to give that courtesy to independent artists who are just trying to bring what they do to the forefront. It's a really awesome thing. It's a really awesome thing.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think so often, once commerce becomes a part of what the fans are doing around the band, we've seen historically that it can get a little dark sometimes, or even the band can take advantage of price gouging or maybe not the band, but the promoters or the organizers or the venue. So it's really special to like have that support for independent artists. And I really hope to continue, you know, connecting people um being a liaison where where I can be and and event organizing, sure, but just continuing to build community. It's really special.
It really is, and it's a part of what I hope we're doing here with Secondhand Talent. And I'm really, really grateful that you're a part of this, and I'm looking forward to, watching you continue to grow as we move forward. We're out of time for these 2 weeks, but this has been 2 episodes of Secondhand Talent with Caroline Herbster of Rising Tide Art Studio. Caroline, again, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I'm sorry we couldn't get you in last season. I'm so glad we got you in this time.
It was divine timing, meant to be. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another episode of Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday. That's podcast. There you go.